everyone! Thank you to the princess for kicking us off yesterday with some super cool facts about her favorite female villain, Maleficent. And so it only makes sense that today's topic is favorite male villain. But the thing is, I don't really have one. I don't hate them or anything, but no one really stands out in my mind. But when I was doing the planning for this video, I was looking pretty closely at the male villains, and I started to notice a few things. Isn't it weird how often male villains are creepy? That's not unexpected. I mean, they are villains after all, but the female villains aren't usually like this. Though not without their own sexist problems, female villains are usually cold and powerful, regal and impressive. But male villains? How often are they flirtatious or predatory? Manipulative, physically weak, or easily frightened? How often are they sassy, thin, or well-dressed? These aren't a smattering of random characteristics. These kind of traits are grouped together pretty frequently in the form of what's known as the sissy archetype. A sissy is defined as someone who is effeminate or cowardly, usually used to insult men by saying they have feminine qualities. The part of the sissy in film dates back to the silent film era, but I want you to think about these characteristics a little more for a second. What do they remind you of besides villains? Perhaps the sassy gay friend? You know, the thin, weak, limp-wristed guy who loves clothes so much that he dresses better than most women. TV Tropes refers to this as the camp gay trope and says that this character was most likely inspired by the flamboyant Oscar Wilde. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an effeminate, fashion-loving gay man, but when it's the predominant representation of the queer community, it leads to negative and restrictive stereotypes of an extremely diverse community. And to take it one step further, the problem is even worse when this kind of character only appears in children's media as the villain. Now, characters that fit the camp gay trope, like Damien from Mean Girls, or like 90% of the characters in The Birdcage, are usually forthcoming about being gay. Disney villains are not. How are the two connected? And how can villains like Frollo and Jafar fall into these effeminate sissy villain categories when they have obvious heterosexual tendencies? Because queer coding, that's why. This is now the third time I've mentioned this in a video, and Feminist Disney gives an awesome explanation of what it is. A character that is given certain characteristics that are likely to reference queerness in the audience's subconscious. Queer coding doesn't necessarily mean that a character is gay, or that their evilness is based in being queer. It means that the character is evil because society associates queer with bad. There's this really fantastic paper called Gender Transgression and Villainy in Animated Film that talks about how villains show characteristics of gender deviance, basically what society does not expect of its members. The paper also notes that with these kinds of villains, by the end of the movie, are always brought under control and destroyed to restore the natural social order, removing any possibility for these characters to truly subvert heterogender norms. But how does Disney queer code their villains? The things I'm going to be discussing might seem vague or non-existent when looked at by themselves, but when juxtaposed with their heroic counterparts, it's much easier to see. And it's important to remember that heroes represent appropriate gender presentation, as well as desirable and encouraged traits in general. And by that same token, villains reflect undesirable and wrong behaviors. This video is not an invitation for you to find every single exception to the rule. There are even going to be some villains that I talk about here that don't fit every single marker for queer coding. The point of this is to show that these patterns exist and are not anomalies. Since gender presentation is usually grounded in the physical, let's really look at the villains. Starting with body type, heroes are solid and muscular and handsome, the epitome of masculinity and what young boys should aspire to be and look like. They have prominent jawlines and obvious muscles and square faces. And of course, Disney heroes almost always end up with a Disney heroine. And male villains can be these things, like Gaston or Rourke or Clayton or Hans. But more often they're not. In fact, they're usually very unlike the typical hero. They're usually thin and ugly and have long, narrow faces. They lack any defined muscles. They have skinny arms or legs, if we can even see them. They look positively wimpy next to their hero. Look at the side profile of Scar and Mufasa. Mufasa's face is noticeably more broad and strong than Scar's face. Scar looks emaciated next to the beefy and solid Mufasa. And they're supposed to be brothers. They should look a little similar. The same goes for Hades and Zeus. Hades has this very long and thin face, whereas Zeus's face is pretty much a square. And while it's pretty obvious that Zeus and Hercules are ripped, you can't really tell with Hades because of his outfit. He's got on this long, flowing robe that conceals any indication of physical strength. Manly men should be proud to display their bodies. And they usually do. But cowardly and sissy men like Jafar and Hades and Frollo wear dresses is. And when they don't wear dresses, it's not like their fashion is a ton more traditionally masculine anyway. When we talk about wardrobe, Governor Ratcliffe from Pocahontas is probably the best example. Oh, let's see, there are just so many things. His wardrobe is pink, a dark magenta pink, but a pink nonetheless, which a Disney hero would never be caught wearing, but would probably make fun of a man for wearing because it's a girly color.
So you're a fan of pink?
Should I mention the pigtails tied with pink ribbons now? There is such an attention to detail in Ratcliffe's ensemble. He has frilly cuffs, he's got a cape, a proper hat, and this jeweled belt cape thing? What? But John Smith's running around the woods in this simple manly outfit because men don't care about their clothing or appearance. They're men of action, they go out and do things. And just this. Yes. This entire scene, actually, now that I think about it. Why do male villains usually have ghost makeup? Like darkened eyelids and lips. Male villains also usually have eyelashes. You know who else has eyelashes? The princesses, the villainesses, the female characters. You know who doesn't have eyelashes? Literally any other male character. Then there's body language. They all hold themselves up proudly, chests out, shoulders back. They do not have a firm gait, they glide, they're graceful. To put it in the simplest terms, these male Disney villains are most likened to female Disney villains. Think about it. The faces, the implied makeup, the posture, the clothing, the body types are all trademarks of the most famous Disney female villains. So it's a double whammy, because it's bad for a man to have feminine qualities. And men who have feminine qualities are automatically assumed to be gay, which kind of just enforces these traditional ideas of gender role, and that masculine and feminine should be together, or that a person has to be either one of these things to be considered normal. I don't know, is that more like a quadruple whammy? Male villains are usually given feminine traits because being a woman is bad, but being a man who acts like a woman is worse. But they're not doing this anymore, right? We're past that subtle ingrained homophobia of the entire history of cinema. Let's look at a more recent movie, Wreck-It Ralph. That's a good one. Good film. We've got King Candy. Tiny, wimpy, okay, but who's the hero? Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah, super buff, really huge. You get my drift, there's a huge contrast. While Felix is much closer to King Candy's physique than Ralph is, and he actually has some feminine qualities, he also has a very prominent heterosexual romantic storyline, just in case the audience thought he might be gay. Though I do give some credit to Disney for Felix being feminine and shorter and certainly much less physically capable than his romantic interest. But Wreck-It Ralph did run into some issues when he uses a subtle homophobic slur against King Candy. And that's honestly not everything. There are characters I didn't get to really talk about because I didn't have time, like Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective, or even antagonistic characters like Chifu from Mulan, or Ursula, who was based off of a drag queen. This doesn't mean you can't still love Scar or Hades or anybody that I mentioned. They're cool and interesting villains who are really fun to watch. You might have even realized your sexual or gender identity by watching these characters when you were younger. And the fact that these characters are problematic and reflect this idea that queer is bad does not make your realization any less real or valid. But it is something to be aware of, and to encourage Disney not to continue in the future. If you want more varied queer rules, clap your hands. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you think Queen Elsa should end up with another woman, or if you're happy to keep her as asexual representation, because that's important too. Subscribe to watch more of our chilling challenge, and let me know in the comments if Disney helped you realize any sexual or gender identity, or if you just wanted to be a villain. The Princess will see you tomorrow.
There's one in every family, sire. Two in mine, actually. And they always manage to ruin special occasions.